Hello, Croeso Fulcher. Welcome back to the channel, Old Boy here, and today I'm visiting the rural countryside of Cumbria, where I'm getting an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at an exciting archaeological discovery. What is thought to be the largest Viking Age structure ever to be discovered in Britain. A discovery which may be changing the very perceptions of Viking Age settlement in England. But before we get to the site itself, we'll be visiting some of the key Viking sites that offer valuable insights into the region's past, including the Gosforth Cross and the famous Loki Stone. Join me as we uncover the stories and myths of the Norse settlers that once called this land home, and get a first-hand look at the discoveries that have been made in close proximity to the rural coasts of Cumbria. Behind me, across this stretch of sea, lies the Isle of Man in Ireland, both places which once had significant Viking settlement. Over 1,000 years ago, in 1014 AD, one of the most decisive battles in Irish history took place, the Battle of Clontarf. On one side stood the Irish High King Brian Boru, leading a coalition of Munster and Southern Irish forces. On the other side stood Maelmord MacMurrough and his Viking allies led by Sigtrygg Silkbeard, the ruler of Dublin. The battle was fierce, taking place on Good Friday and lasting from sunrise until sunset, with thousands fighting on either side. Though Brian Boru was killed, his forces won a decisive victory, shattering Viking power in Ireland. In the aftermath, many of the Viking warriors fled across the sea, some apparently making their way to the Cumbrian coast. But what traces did they leave behind? Okay, so the first stop on today's adventure is going to be St Mary's Church in Gosforth, because we're going to take a look at the Gosforth Cross and some hogback stones. See you there. Gosforth, further south along the Cumbrian coast. This quiet village holds one of the most remarkable Viking monuments in Britain. Let's go take a look. Here in the village of Gosforth stands one of the most remarkable Viking monuments in Britain, the Gosforth Cross. Dating to the early 10th century, this towering stone is carved in a style that blends Scandinavian and insular artistic traditions, with flowing tendrils, interwoven beasts and intricate knotwork typical of late Viking Age art. But what makes the Gosforth Cross truly extraordinary is what the carvings depict. They are thought to tell a story from Norse mythology known as Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world. One panel is thought to represent the great wolf of Fenrir locked in battle with a figure who is believed to be Vidar, Odin's son, who is prying open its jaws in vengeance for his father's death. Elsewhere, we see what is believed to be Loki, bound in punishment, with his wife Sigyn beside him, shielding him from the serpent's venom. Another section of the cross is thought to depict the god Heimdallr, who stands with his horn ready to sound the call for the final battle. Finally, on another fragment of stone, which is thought to have once been part of the cross, we find another scene, which is thought to depict Thor's failed attempt to catch Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, a reminder that even the strongest of the gods had their limits. Interestingly, the cross also seems to contain Christian motifs, hinting at a time when Norse settlers were adapting to new religious influences. But whether the inclusion of both Norse and Christian imagery was an intentional fusion of beliefs or a reflection of an evolving cultural identity is still the subject of debate. Inside the church, we find another fascinating indicator of Viking presence: hogback stones. These large curved grave markers are shaped like the board roof of a longhouse. And these particular examples are thought to date to around the late 10th or early 11th centuries. The name hogback comes from their distinctive sloping shape, resembling the ridge of a hog's spine. And the carvings that can be found along the sides of these stones are intricate, often featuring interwoven beasts, warriors, or protective guardians, in a style influenced by both Norse and Anglo-Saxon art. Some scholars believe they represent longhouses for the dead, sheltering them in the afterlife, while others see them as symbols of power, marking the graves of elite Norse settlers. Hogback stones are unique to Britain and appear only in areas of Viking settlement, particularly in northern England and southern Scotland. Their absence from Scandinavia suggests they were a local innovation, a blending of Viking and Anglo-Saxon traditions during a time of cultural exchange. My journey now takes me inland, from Gosforth to Kirby Stephen, in the heart of Cumbria's Eden Valley. Here we'll find another fascinating piece of Viking heritage that I can't wait to show you. Further inland in Kirby Stephen, we find another striking piece of Viking heritage: the Loki Stone. This carved pillar is widely thought to depict Loki in a moment of divine punishment. He is bound, his arms pinned to his sides, much like the myth where the gods imprison him beneath the earth. According to Norse legend, Loki was tied to 3 rocks in a cave with the entrails of his own son, while a serpent dripped venom onto his face as punishment for his role in the death of Balder. His writhing form seen here is a rare depiction of this moment in Viking art. This carving seems to indicate that even as Norse settlers in England adapted to their new surroundings, they still carried the weight of their old myths and stories. But what did Loki's bound form mean to them? Okay, so now that we've seen the Loki Stone, we're going to head back over to the coasts of Cumbria, over to the site where what is described as the largest Viking Age structure in Britain was uncovered. As I make my way to High Tarns, I'm eager to see the site where this incredible Viking structure once stood. I also can't wait to hear firsthand from the excavation team about how this fascinating discovery came to light. Okay, so here we are at the excavation site at High Tarns, not far from Mowbray in Cumbria, where what is believed to be the largest Viking Age structure in Britain is being uncovered. And this site may give us rare insights into Viking settlement life and may also be changing our very perceptions of Viking settlement in Britain. And I'm here today because I'm going to be talking to Mark Graham, who is managing the excavation, to find out more about what has been uncovered here and what the next steps are in this ongoing project. Okay, Mark, so thank you for being here. Can you tell us about what has been found so far and how it changes our perception of Viking settlement in Britain?
So what's been found so far is a large timber building. That was our first identification of anything in this land, was from a crop mark, an aerial photograph showing a series of post holes that did form the perfect footprint of a large post-in-ground constructed timber building. So from there we were funded through the DEFRA Farming in Protected Landscapes programme to work with local people, and we did rather than just going straight in and digging a post hole, we did a geophysical survey of the land around the timber building, because whatever the timber building was, whatever period, it wouldn't stand on its own in isolation. And that geophysical survey revealed lots of archaeological anomalies in the land around. And so we then were funded again through DEFRA, through the FIPL scheme, to do a community excavation. We worked with more than 50 local volunteers, and here we put a trench right through the centre of the timber building, and we found the post holes, which was great. The post holes had a fantastic correlation with the aerial photograph, and the significance of that is that we don't have to dig the whole thing. Once we've confirmed that correlation between the post holes in the ground and the crop mark, we know that this is a timber 50 metre by 15 long building, so it is a whopper. After that, unfortunately, there were no floor surfaces left. This is agricultural land. It's been ploughed and ploughed again. It's on glacial till, so the floor surfaces are gone, and we found no artifactual evidence, no cultural material. So by the end of the excavation, we didn't have a date, but a couple of months ago we got the carbon dates back. So when we dig the post holes, we look for suitable carbon dating material, and we found some in one of the post holes, and that carbon date came back at 990 to 1040 AD with a 95% certainty. So from 2 months ago we could say, yes, this is a Viking Age hall. So yeah, great result. And as it turns out, the largest Viking Age building in Britain so far. Now, we didn't set out to find the largest Viking Age building in Britain. Any Viking Age building would have been an absolute, delight to find, because it's so scarce in the archaeological record. But we're really lucky actually with the aerial photograph. One reason that's often given for not finding Viking Age buildings in the rural environment is that later farmhouses are built on top of them. Because when you have a good place to settle and live, it's logical that carries on. But here, this site has not been built on, so that's why we can see the whole footprint and why we can draw these conclusions. So it's really exciting. Of course, we have the archaeological record and we have the historic record, documentary evidence, and the two, we like to match them up. But in Cumbria, evidence for pre-conquest documents through literature is incredibly rare. It's not like, so I work in Iceland with the university there, and if we go to work at a Viking site, for example, or in other parts of Scandinavia, you have documentary sources which will tell you, from the sagas, for example, in Iceland, who the lord was who built the hall, when he left Norway, when he got to Iceland, when he died. Yeah. So you can tie it all together. And I was asked quite a few times, who built the hall, who lived here? and honestly, I confess to rolling my eyes, thinking we'll never know that, But then I did a bit of research, having been asked the question. I thought, how far can we get? And there is one document which is incredibly relevant to the situation here. And that is called Gospatric's Writ. The Writ of Gospatric was a Northumberland earl. And it is, the text survives. And that is Gospatric granting rights in Allerdale. This was Allerdale. Written around 1040, 1060, pre-conquest, most historians think. And it's granting a man called Thorfinn MacThor land and rights in effectively this part of Cumbria in Allerdale. That gave him jurisdiction, it gave him rights to hold taxes, to pass judgment in effect. So he was a wealthy magnate, he was Gospatric's man, if you like, and also in that writ is evidence that those same rights belong to his father, Thor. You don't get much more Viking than that, do you?
That's it.
Now, in the lands given, there are descriptions of the River Waver, which is very close to here, the Wampool, also perhaps more centred towards Cumdivock, up towards Carlisle there. But we have a name, and I never thought in a million years we'd get that close to having somebody's name from the documents. And it's the right time period. So at the very least, if this wasn't the land of Thorfinn MacThor, they knew each other. Whoever this magnate was, he would know Thorfinn MacThor. So that's pretty good.
No, excellent. And I think, as you said, you don't get a name more Norse than that, really, do you? So I'm wondering if there's also a bit of the Celtic language in there with the Finn element as well, but you know that's
and the Mac Irish.
that's it. Yeah, because
So.
Finn means something like bright or white in the Gaelic. So yeah, I wonder if there is a link there. Okay, so what are the next steps then for this project? Are you in the process of sort of cataloguing the finds and stuff, analysing data from the site?
Finds were very rare. I wish we were cataloguing a lot of finds, but sadly, the finds element here, we didn't have any stratified cultural material from this trench. That, as it turns out, that is because it's early medieval. There wasn't a lot of pottery kicking around. They would use a lot of organic material. The building itself would be very organic. So there's nothing left there. But we do have really valuable environmental material. So though we take soil samples, and particularly when we talk about Trench 2 and the corn dryer, that really starts to help us piece together exciting parts of the history of agriculture and social structure. And those two go hand in hand. Social structure because we have a wealthy magnate here. This isn't the work of a small farm, a small family. This tells us there is a hierarchy, a lord, people working the land collectively. So yeah, we're still assessing the full material, the environmental, to piece that story together. And interestingly, we know the monastery comes to Home Cultrum close to here in 1150, and that by 1200 they had a grange farm here. In the past, that's tended to sort of work as a benchmark in our understanding of life in rural Cumbria, because high medieval is well studied, high medieval monasticism. We understand the structure and the system. But the finds here with the grain dryer, particularly in Trench 2, which I think we'll have a look at in a minute, that tells us that system, that intensive agriculture, that production of crops, we're pushing it back. We're now saying that was happening in the 11th century, 100 years at least before the monastery came. So that's really exciting, because before that, we didn't know what the monks found when they came. You could have argued from the archaeological record that we were very small scale, independent people farming small plots, and that's gone. But now we know different.
Well, thank you very much for that insight. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm here with the local landowners. Would you like to just introduce yourself, please?
Neil Armstrong.
Irene Armstrong.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me access to your land here. Yeah. And the first question I had is, before this discovery, was there any folk history or word of mouth history related to the land at all?
No, there wasn't.
Not that we were aware of, no.
No. The first thing I was aware of, I changed my phone about 3 years ago, and I looked on Google Earth, and I saw the farm, and I saw this boat shape of post holes, which I found in this field, and I thought, what's that? And then, of course, the next thing was that Mark came knocking on the door, and that
you obviously saw the same
thing we did. Yeah. So after that,
intrigued by that.
Yeah, very.
And it looked quite big, from an aerial photograph.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that was the inception of the dig, really.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah, well,
Mark's on the land.
Mark got in touch
and said what obviously trying to find out what it was. Obviously being so big. So we were interested in history anyway, so
yeah,
we're as fascinated as he was, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a discovery to have been made on your land as well. That's you must have been ecstatic.
It is. It's incredible when you never think in your wildest dream you'd find something like this.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I say, we've only been here just over 20 years, and it's been there over 1,000 years, which is just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So this site, was it in the family prior to that, or did you kind of just step into the role?
It was owned by my husband's uncle. Previous to that, so that was in the 70s, I think. It was bought then. So I've been here for a little while as a family.
But nothing up till then.
Nothing found
at all. No.
So no pottery, nothing had ever turned up. No. It was quite a surprise then, really.
Yeah. Aye. The only thing is Victorian willow pattern. That's about the only thing we ever found when we were ploughing.
Broken plate, a modern one, Victorian.
Yeah, nothing new. Yeah, all new, I should say.
Okay, well, thank you very much once again, and thanks for allowing us access to your
No
land
bother.
today.
No
So
problem.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to you both.
Thank you
Thank
now.
you.
Okay, so where are we headed next then, Mark?
We're heading over to, well, what we call Trench 2. From the geophysical survey, we found a lot of archaeological anomalies around what we now know as the Viking Age Hall. All funding is limited. We very generously were granted funding through DEFRA to do a community excavation, but we have to limit the number of trenches. So you're presented with all these anomalies. You're trying to answer the question, what's happening in association with the hall? And we chose an anomaly just on this mound here that we're coming up onto. You'll see the position of the trench. This mound is a natural glacial mound. It's sandy material. The ground over there that we were excavating in Trench 1 is glacial till, so that's a very mixed deposit from the Ice Age, stone, gravel, sand. But here you've got this mound of sand. And from the aerial photograph, we could see a positive crop mark, and that implies a cut in the ground, just like a massive post hole, if you like. There's more moisture in there. From the resistance survey, we could see that there is a cut in the ground because it was low resistance, bounded by high resistance. That looked like some sort of stone chamber in the ground with stone walling. And from the magnetometry, it's a positive magnetic signal. That implied some sort of industry. So this was the position of Trench 2. We had those 3 layers of data, and we were pretty confident we would get something, but we didn't know what. Now, very early on in the machining here, and from the magnetometry, we suspected metalworking. Obviously, metalworking, blacksmithing, smelting, they produce a lot of metal waste, and magnetometers love them. So we had this strong black and white speckled area with this real concentration there. And when we used the machine to take the topsoil off the plough soil, we started finding smithing hearth bases, blacksmithing waste. And that's the waste material. After the forging, it collects in the hearth, and that's then cast out as waste. So we started finding quite a lot of them. And, when you're on site, you're interpreting as you go. It's community excavation. Yeah. We're all interpreting as we go. Every theory is valid until we write the report. That's a good way to work. We come up with a theory, we test it. And logically, we thought, well, this could be a blacksmith's. Perfect. We've got a Viking Age hall, which we didn't know at the time. But could this be a blacksmith cut into the side of the hill? And so we went through the smithing waste, and we found a large cut in the ground. We started following down the fill of that cut, bringing out all this smithing waste. But then it stopped, and we found this clay bowl. So that this smithing waste and darker earth was filling a clay bowl, and the clay here isn't natural. So it was still archaeology. And so then we found some steps leading down into this cut. And ultimately what we found, we also had Don O'Mara from Historic England processing the soil samples, and he found thousands of charred oats. And straight away he said, it's a corn dryer. This was a grain drying kiln, but on a scale from the medieval period even, that we haven't seen before in Cumbria. So it was a really exciting dig. It was brilliant archaeology to excavate. You got this fantastic stone-lined chamber, which led to an arched stoke hole. The arch had collapsed, but you can see the arch. And then in the far end there, we had this circular drying chamber. And the way that works is it's to dry grain from cultivation, so oats predominantly in this case. And the oats would be, so you go down into the drying kiln, you have a low heat fire, probably peat. Yep. You don't want the flames to torch your crops. And that then acts as a drying kiln, so the low heat is maintained. And then above the stoke hole in the drying chamber, you have sort of mats of wattle and reeds, and you put the fresh grain onto that. It dries, and then you can store it and process it. But this really, we were talking earlier about interpreting as you go. As we came to the end of the excavation, we'd only found 2 pieces of pottery in the whole dig, stratified.
Wow.
But those 2 were associated with the metalworking waste from the context above the collapsed grain dryer. And they are, initially sort of identified as 13th to 14th century. so Cistercian,
Yeah.
in this part of the world. Now that combined with the size of the grain dryer itself meant that when we filled these trenches in, yes, we didn't have any dating for the grain dryer itself or the building, but I thought this has to be the monastery, because who else would build a 7-metre long stone-lined corn dryer? Who would have that agriculture? And we now know, of course, that this is contemporary, perhaps a later development of the hall. And that's what I was saying about bringing forward, pushing back in time, if you like, that complex agricultural system, the agricultural economy. They were growing crops in sufficient quantity to require that corn dryer of that size. So we're learning all the time, but that really was a wow moment.
Oh, excellent, thank you. And does it say anything about maybe the number of people who were staying here at the time as well?
Yes, I don't have it's hard to come up with numbers, but I think for now, what you can say is that this was the work of many people. This is a collective, and I use the term manor farm because that's appropriate. In Scandinavia, in Denmark, for example, early medieval manor farms are well studied, quite well known. When we talk about Gospatric's writ and the granting of lands to Thorfinn MacThor, you could call that a manor that he's granted. You could even think of a manor perhaps not 1,000,000 miles away from a monastery. If you take the religious aspect out of it, you have a focus of a monastery or a hall, and around that you have all the industry and activity. So this is the work, collective work by many people for many people. Yeah.
Finally, from my perspective, any plans to be back on site?
Oh, we would love to be back on site. That is the plan. That's the aim. We're just finishing the final excavation reports now with the carbon dates, and already thinking about what to do next. And there is so much more to do. If we look at the hall itself, it looks like quite a big trench, but you've got more than 20 metres of building either side of our excavation. So looking at the north and the south part to see how the hall might have, if there any floor surfaces survive, any indications of subdivision of the multiple use of the hall for different functions, we'd like to have a look at that. There are some anomalies closer to the hall, but also further out in the landscape, in the fields either side of me now, there are anomalies which I'm confident some are contemporary with the Viking Age hall, and should tell us a lot more about the functioning, about the industry, economy, agriculture that was happening here before the conquest.
Well, I'm very excited to see what happens in the future. And I was just going to say, is there anything else that you would finally like to close out with?
Just a couple of things, something I forgot to say earlier, so you might be able to edit it in.
Yeah.
So when we talk about pre-conquest England, Norman conquest, seismic event, 1066, as everyone knows. But actually the particular situation of High Tarns here in North Cumbria, in what was Allerdale, that doesn't apply. Conquest here is 1092, when Carlisle was taken by William Rufus. So that doesn't sound a big difference, but what it has huge implications, because post-conquest 1066 in the south of England, we have the harrying of the north, a brutal campaign of suppression by William the Conqueror to put pay to any notions of rebellion from the north. But it didn't come here because we weren't Norman here. Here we were more allied with Scotland, we're on the Solway. And so we can effectively say that the early medieval period, yes, it ends with the Norman conquest, but our date is 1092. And we missed all of that. So the transfer of power, we now know there was a Viking Age hall functioning as a manor farm. In 1092, William Rufus takes Carlisle and expels Dolphin, who was the Viking Age magnate there. But it doesn't seem to have applied to all of Allerdale. And there is more evidence that this could have been a soft power transition where life could have continued as before here. And so one of the big research questions for coming back and further work is, could this manor farm have functioned until the monastery itself? Until 1150, 1200. And we see no real seismic shifts, no seismic historic event here that would prevent that happening. A final thought, hogback stones in Cumbria, an iconic Anglo-Scandinavian piece of cultural heritage. You find them in our earliest church sites, sometimes intact, sometimes as fragments, often found in the foundations of churches during rebuilds in the Victorian period. They're fascinating because they are stone sculpted carvings of high status Viking Age halls. They've got the shingle roofs. Some, like at Gosforth, even have a Viking shield wall of the army on the side. Some have beasts and bears, but they've been discussed a lot. Fascinate me. Were they sort of folk memory harking back to the homelands of Scandinavia? Were they representations of Valhalla? Were they grave markers? Because I don't think we've ever actually found one directly associated with a grave, but they're at churches, so it's a good theory. But just as a final thought, 6 miles just that way is the Cross Canonby Hogback. A great example, sitting outside the church door, much overlooked. But for the first time now, we can say that the people who carved those stones saw such buildings in the landscape in their lifetime. And that gives me shivers, actually. That's good.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for that final thought. I think that's a perfect closure to the interview. So thanks once again for being here and allowing me to come and speak to you on the site.
Pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Okay, so now that we're done at High Tarns, the next up on the list is Moor Forge, which is a reconstructed Viking settlement, including longhouses, a forge and a workshop. So I'll see you there very soon. Now it's just a short drive from High Tarns to Moor Forge, where I'll be diving deeper into the Viking experience and learning more about their traditions. Now, let us take a step back in time to explore elements of a Viking settlement that have been meticulously reconstructed here at Moor Forge. From everyday tools to longhouses, this site brings Viking living back to life, giving us a glimpse into what day-to-day life may have been like for those who settled here over 1,000 years ago. As I walk through the settlement, it's hard not to be amazed by the attention to detail. The team has clearly worked tirelessly to ensure that every element reflects Viking craftsmanship, right down to the methods used to construct the buildings. Whether you're learning about Viking navigation techniques or witnessing their traditional crafts, Moor Forge offers a hands-on, interactive journey into the past. One that keeps the Viking spirit alive and will preserve it for generations to come. And now I get to speak with the owner and founder of Moor Forge, David Watson, who has been instrumental in bringing this Viking settlement to life. Okay, so here I am with the owner of Moor Forge. Would you just like to introduce yourself quickly, please?
Yeah, I'm David Watson, and I've been here a good number of years now. It's old family land, so it's and we're just doing what we can with it and moving forward and tying in with the local history and so on. So, yeah, that's us.
Excellent, thank you. And my first question for you would be, could you just tell me about the origins of Moor Forge? What inspired you to create it?
Well, what started was an interest in local history, and then I was working with Grampus Training Heritage, who Mark works for, the archaeologist. So I was doing project work with them, and they were doing youth exchanges, European youth exchanges and so on, concentrated on traditional crafts. So to tie it in, we ended up building the little forge here on site as part of one of their projects. So that's what kickstarted it. That's about 11 years ago now we've done that.
Wow.
And we had some Icelanders over, and they done the build on this, the main part of the build, and I helped them with that. And that got us started. And now I just like doing these buildings. So
Yeah. Well, they look incredible. So, you've done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. So what was the specific moment or discovery or interest that basically got you started? The first thing that made you go, right, we're going to go ahead and do this?
As I say, it was a lot to do with this project work, but also I've been aware of Vikings in the area, and sort of once I started doing the project work, I became more and more interested in the local history, and it's through the likes of Mark and that at Grampus, and everybody's talking about Vikings and so on. And then we went out to Reeb as part of one of the projects. We went to the Viking fair at the Reeb Living History Village, And that's sort of, you come back from there sort of thinking, right, I'm gonna build something Viking. So it's
Yeah.
so that was sort of the initial spark, and it's rolled on from there, and it's just sort of gained popularity and interest, and as other people's interest in the place has grown, the more I'm wanting to do, because I'm thinking, yeah, people like this. So.
And as well, how incredible that they've just made that discovery just, a couple of miles down the road.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely brilliant, because, I mean, our large longhouse here, that's still sort of under construction, it's exactly the same layout and floor plan and construction as what they found down at the Tarns. But the one down at the Tarns, I mean, this one's 18 metres, the one down at the Tarns is 50 metres. So, it's... So when I found that, I thought, ooh, that kind of proves a point, because it's a common question. People will turn up and they'll say, was the Vikings around here? Well, I can say, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's
big style, yeah.
So how did you go about researching and designing the settlement? Did you draw inspiration from any pre-existing sites?
It's the floor plan of these longhouses with the board shape. It's a standard design. I mean, this longhouse here, 10 metres long, 5 metres wide. They're it's really common. You find the bases up in the lakes and everywhere really, and it seems to be the standard floor plan for these countryside dwellings for a family. The little forge there, it's based on designs from Norway, Iceland, the very north of Scotland, as a general purpose, harsh weather building. So, yeah, so I've based it on historical evidence. With the longhouses, the only thing that varies is the materials. This one's all timber for practical reasons, but up in the lakes there were stone walls with a bracken or heather thatch roof. Down on the Solway Plain, they have the cob earthen walls with a straw thatch roof. It's whatever materials are local. So it's based on actual finds and archaeological diggings and what we know that were constructed in that period up in the north of England, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I'm really excited to take a look inside some of the buildings.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem at all.
Next, I get to walk through the site with the Science Viking and get a fascinating insight into the Viking world, not just from a historical perspective, but from a scientific one. The Science Viking, a passionate reenactor with over 30 years of experience, shows me some of the amazing Viking artifacts on display here. First, we discuss grooming tools that reveal the Vikings' attention to personal care, and I learn about their advanced navigation techniques essential for their seafaring lifestyle. He also shows me some rather pungent but effective medicine which was used in the Viking period that is now being shown to be effective in the treatment of modern-day ailments. Then we head over to the forge where he demonstrates a long-handled axe, giving me a glimpse into Viking craftsmanship. The Science Viking explains how metallurgy played a crucial role in Viking society, helping them forge the tools that made them such skilled warriors and craftsmen. The highlight of the visit, though, is the new longhouse which is currently under construction and is based on the design we saw earlier on the hogback stone at Gosforth. Even though its size is impressive, I'm told that this building is roughly a quarter of the size of the Viking structure that once stood at High Tarns. It's amazing to witness just how history really does come alive here. The Science Vikings' expertise in both history and science truly highlights how modern techniques allow us to gain a deeper understanding of the past. Okay, so thank you very much for showing me around the site. I really appreciate it. And for everyone at home, please do check out Moor Forge and the Science Viking at Moor Forge.
Yep. Oh, it's been absolutely brilliant. It's been really good showing you around. Thanks for coming.
From the battlefields of Clontarf to the Viking carvings left behind in Cumbria, today we've explored a story of migration, settlement and cultural fusion. Many of the questions we've asked, such as how the Vikings adapted and how their culture survived, remain somewhat unanswered, and all we can hope is that more evidence is uncovered as time goes by. The Gosforth Cross and Loki Stone stand as a testament to an enduring Norse influence in the area, while the hogback stones hint at how these settlers adapted and evolved within their new surroundings. Even though the excavation at High Tarns has been completed for now, the discoveries made here offer invaluable insights into who these settlers were, how they lived, and how they saw themselves. From everyday objects to traces of long-lost structures, each find helps us piece together a clearer picture of how Viking culture left its mark on Britain. If you've enjoyed the video today on Viking history, please do let me know your thoughts in the comments below and consider subscribing. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Oh boy, out.